This is Emil, and I'm bothered, I'm upset, and we need to do something. These executive orders is outrageous. We need to go ahead and figure out where the shredder is at. So we ain't got the Ninja Turtles. We ain't got the FBI. We don't have the CIA. We don't have none of those 3 or 4 letters. All we have is a bird watcher and a person who wants change to happen. If you like change, help for democracy. Come join. Keep watch. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time it is, I hope you're doing well. You're here with Emil, and we're going over the executive orders. All right. Unleashing America's offshore critical minerals and resources. April 24th, 2025. Strengthening probationary periods in the federal service, advancing artificial intelligence in education for American youth, restoring equality of opportunity in meritocracy, reinstating common sense school discipline policies, preparing Americans for high-paying skilled trade jobs of the future. White House initiatives to promote excellence in innovation at historically Black colleges and universities. Reforming accreditation to strengthen higher education. Transparency regarding foreign influence at American universities. Restoring American seafood competitiveness. All right, so it's a lot. Looking at the first one, that would be the category of general welfare, depending on, no. That's EPA. That's more of an EPA issue. Let's look at it. Unleashing America's offshore critical minerals and resources. This is executive order. I don't know how many he's had. It's not telling us what number this is, but it was signed today. By the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered, Section 1, background. The U.S. has a core national security and economic interest in maintaining leadership in deep sea science and technology in seabed mineral resources. The U.S. faces unprecedented economic and national security challenges in securing reliable supplies of critical minerals independent of foreign adversary control. Vast offshore seabed areas hold critical minerals and energy resources. These resources are key to strengthening our economy, securing our energy future, and reducing dependence on foreign suppliers for critical minerals. The U.S. also controls seabed mineral resources in one of the largest ocean areas of the world. Our nation can, through the exercise of existing authorities and by establishing international partnerships, access potentially vast resources in seabed polymetallic metallic nodules, other subsea geologic structures, and coastal deposits containing strategic minerals such as nickel, cobalt, copper, magnesium, titanium, and rare earth elements, which are vital to our national security and economic prosperity. Our nation must take immediate action to accelerate the responsible development of seabed mineral resources, quantify the nation's endowment of seabed minerals, reinvigorate American leadership in associated extraction in processing technologies, and ensure secure supply chains for our defense, infrastructure, and energy sectors. Section 2, the policy. It is the policy of the U.S. to advance U.S. leadership in seabed mineral development by A, rapidly developing domestic capabilities for the exploration, characterizations, collection, and processing of seabed mineral resources through streamlined permitting without compromising environmental and transparency standards. B, supporting investment in deep sea science, mapping, and technology. C, enhancing coordination among executive departments and agencies with respect to seabed mineral development activities described in this order. Okay, it's a lot. Mm, 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 mm.
Sector 2. Policy. It is the policy of the United States to advance United States leadership in seabed mineral development by A. Rapidly developing domestic capabilities for the exploration, characterization, collection, and processing of seabed mineral resources through streamlined permitting without compromising environmental and transparency standards. B. Supporting investment in deep sea science, mapping, and technology. C. Enhancing coordination among executive departments and agencies, with respect to seabed mineral development activities described in this order. D. Establishing the United States as a global leader in responsible seabed mineral exploration, development technologies, and practices, and as a partner for countries developing seabed mineral resources in areas within their national jurisdictions, including their exclusive economic zones, EEZ, E. Creating a robust domestic supply chain for critical minerals derived from seabed resources to support economic growth, reindustrialization, and military preparedness, including through new processing capabilities, and F. Strengthening partnerships with allies and industry to counter China's growing influence over seabed mineral resources and to ensure United States companies are well positioned to support allies and partners interested in developing seabed minerals responsibly in areas within their national jurisdictions, including their EEZs. Sector 3. Strategic Seabed Critical Mineral Access. Within 60 days of the date of this order, A. The Secretary of Commerce shall, I. Acting through the Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and in consultation with the Secretary of State and the Secretary of the Interior, acting through the Director of the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, expedite the process for reviewing and issuing seabed mineral exploration licenses and commercial recovery permits in areas beyond national jurisdiction under the Deep Seabed Hard Mineral Resources Act, 30 U.S.C. 1401 ETSEQ, consistent with applicable law. The expedited process, consistent with applicable law, should ensure efficiency, predictability, and competitiveness for American companies. 2. In coordination with the Secretary of the Interior and the Secretary of Energy, and in consultation with the heads of other relevant agencies, provide a report to the Assistant to the President for Economic Policy, the Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council, and the Vice Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council that identifies a private sector interest and opportunities for seabed mineral resource exploration, mining, and environmental monitoring in the United States Outer Continental Shelf, in areas beyond national jurisdiction, and in areas within the national jurisdictions of certain other nations that express interest in partnering with United States companies on seabed mineral development, and b. Private sector interest and opportunities for polymetallic nodule and other seabed mineral resource processing capacity in the United States or on United States flagged vessels, and 3. In consultation with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Interior, and the heads of other relevant agencies, and in cooperation with commercial and other non-governmental organizations, develop a plan to map priority areas of the seabed, such as those with abundant or accessible undersea resources, in order to accelerate data collection and characterization. Prioritizing areas within the United States Outer Continental Shelf. b. The Secretary of the Interior shall, I. Establish an expedited process for reviewing and approving permits for prospecting and granting leases for exploration, development, and production of seabed mineral resources within the United States Outer Continental Shelf under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, 43 U.S.C. 1331 ETSEQ, consistent with applicable law. The expedited process, consistent with applicable law, should ensure efficiency, predictability, and competitiveness for American companies, and 2. Identify which critical minerals may be derived from seabed resources and coordinate with the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Energy to indicate which critical minerals are essential for applications such as defense infrastructure, manufacturing, and energy. c. The Secretary of Commerce, in coordination with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Interior, and the Secretary of Energy, shall, I. Engage with key partners and allies to offer support for seabed mineral resource exploration, extraction, processing, and environmental monitoring in areas within the national jurisdictions of those partners and allies, including by seeking scientific collaboration and commercial development opportunities for United States companies, and by developing a prioritized list of countries for engagement, and 2. Provide a joint report to the Assistant to the President for Economic Policy, the Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council, and the Vice Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council on the feasibility of an international benefit-sharing mechanism for seabed mineral resource extraction and development that occurs in areas beyond the national jurisdiction of any country. d. The Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Energy shall, I. Provide a report to the Assistant to the President for Economic Policy, the Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council, and the Vice Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council that addresses the feasibility and any potential benefits or drawbacks of using the National Defense Stockpile for physical or virtual storage of materials derived from seabed polymetallic nodules and of entering offtake agreements for these materials. 2. In consultation with the Secretary of Commerce, review and revise existing regulations, consistent with applicable law, to support domestic processing capabilities for seabed mineral resources, and explore the use of grant and loan authorities, the Defense Production Act, 50 U.S.C. 4501 ETSEQ, and other procurement and financing authorities for this purpose, and 3. ensure the Strategic and Critical Materials Board of Directors considers seabed mineral resource developments when recommending a strategy for ensuring a secure supply of materials designated as critical to national security to the Secretary of Defense under the Strategic and Critical Materials Stockpiling Act, 50. USC 98 ETSEQ. E. The Chief Executive Officer of the United States International Development Finance Corporation, the President of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, the Director of the Trade and Development Agency, and the heads of other relevant agencies shall provide a joint report to the Assistant to the President for Economic Policy, the Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council, and the Vice Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council that identifies tools to support domestic and international seabed mineral resource exploration, extraction, processing, and environmental monitoring. Sector 4. Definitions. As used in this order, A. The term mineral means a critical mineral as designated pursuant to 30 USC 1606, A. 3, as well as uranium, copper, potash, gold, and any other element or compound as determined by the Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council. B. The term seabed mineral resources means polymetallic nodules, cobalt-rich ferromanganese crusts, polymetallic sulfides, heavy mineral sands, phosphorites, and other mineral-bearing materials. C. The term processing includes the concentration, separation, refinement, alloying, and conversion of minerals into usable forms. Sector 5. General provisions. A. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect, I. The authority granted by law to an executive department or agency, or the head thereof, or, 2. The functions of the Director of the Office of Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative, or legislative proposals. B. This order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. C. This order is not intended to, and does not, create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities, its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. Donald J. Trump, The White House, April 24, 2025. News Administration issues contact EOP.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this executive order. So on April 24th, 2025, Mr. Trump signed the executive order to expedite U.S. leadership in seabed mineral development. The directive aims to streamline permitting, enhance domestic capabilities, and counter China's influence in critical mineral resources. While the policy promises economic and strategic benefits, it raises significant environmental and geopolitical concerns. This is what the Washington Post states. So that's where I got that information from, at least, you know, in my own words. So competing with China, I mean, I get it. At the same time, it's like I feel like we're shooting ourselves in our own foot. So moving past, I'm out my feelings. So when we talk about the seabed, the mineral development, talk about the pros and cons. The pros of the seabed mineral development plan will be the strategic resource acquisition, accelerated access to essential minerals like cobalt, nickel, and rare earth elements, supports national defense and technological industries. Also, when we talk about the economic growth, it estimates suggests that deep sea mining could contribute over $300 billion to GDP and create numerous jobs in the next decade. This is what Axios believes in, AIXIO S. So let's talk about the next pro will be the supply chain diversification, reducing reliance on foreign sources, particularly China, enhances national security and economic independence. That's true. It all depends on how you do it. My main thing is the fact that you don't want to alienate the people that supply everything that we use. That just sounds silly. So another con that I can't cat when listening was the environmental risk. Deep sea mining poses threats to marine ecosystems with potential long-term impacts on biodiversity. We can figure out more information looking at the World Resource Institution. Another problem that we foresee, another con will be regulatory challenges. The U.S. move bypasses the International Seabed Authority, leading to international criticism and potential conflicts over ocean governance. So this is something that could spark an international, I guess, hostilities towards international relationships. So another part will be the economic uncertainty, the viability of deep sea mining is questioned due to high costs and evolving demand patterns for raw materials. So let's talk about the matrix for monitoring this executive order. If anybody wanted to monitor this executive order and to figure out the impact that it will have, the way we can do that will be the environmental sustainability matrix in order to figure out if the environment is going to be sustaining. To assess the environmental impact of seabed mining and related activities, carbon emissions, monitoring CO2 emissions from operations. All right. So there is going to be a document that's going to be attached to this video. And this document, if you're looking on the website, emillions.org, or if you're looking at the For Democracy, it will be available. And it will give you some resources that will be able to determine this is for the EPA advocates, people want to advocate for our environment. Those will be the resources that will be left, and that way we could procure the analytical software to be able to determine. SIVO is the software that we could use. At this moment in time, we're just going over the game plan on if somebody wanted to do it, and so that way someone can get on it, because there's so much that there's so many other executive orders. Mine will be education, so I'm gonna be on my hill is gonna be fighting on that. And if you are EPA, somebody who loves the environment, this is something you could do to really help us out and really, maybe you make the difference. I know that it's like when it comes down to it, being a black educator and trying to help the students that came during and after, I would like to do my best to give them the best future and fight those kind of reforms that are going against that. So I digress. So there's going to be about 5 different tests that we can do. We can do a carbon emissions, we can do an energy consumption, and then water usage, waste reduction, and a biodiversity impact. Those are all of the type of matrix that we can determine on figuring out how good this plan is for everyone. When we talk about tracking the Energy consumption, we can use a kilowatt hours. That will be the matrix. We'll talk about water usage. We'll have to do it within tons, measuring the water consumption of the projects. Then when we talk about the waste reduction, quantifying waste reduction efforts in cubic metrics and biodiversity impacts. This will be assessing effects on marine life and ecosystems. We eat out of the water, so that is highly important. When we talk about one thing that I would like to talk about when it comes down to this one executive order will be the STEMs. This will be the education, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and the workforce development matrix. This is how we're going to determine how it affects our infrastructure as far as the minds of the people who are creating the systems. So to evaluate the growth and effectiveness of the STEM education initiatives, the STEM graduate numbers, tracking the number of graduates in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics field. We can figure out this using the C set. When we talk about the gender representation, we can monitor that by figuring out the percentage of women in the STEM occupations as a whole. When we talk about another matrix we can use when we talk about the growth of the STEM education in workforce development matrix, you can use the job growth projections as far as analyzing the projected growth rate for the STEM jobs. And the last one will be the educational performance, comparing in international academic performances in STEM subjects. And so that was just talking about STEM. It is related, but it was not related. And I'm gonna bring us back. I like to talk about STEMs and advocate for those types of things because not everyone is looking at the draft. And I say that because not everyone cares about the NFL Super Bowl or the NBA basketball championships or what boxing fight is going on. And there's actually people who actually want to grow and learn and to help out and really construct a better foundation for us. And you can tell that by looking at Beijing and all those other countries that actually invest in their educational programs. I digress. I move on. So resources for monitoring and evaluate. To evaluate, monitor progress, and assess the impact of seabed mineral development. The National Science Board's science and engineering indicators. Then they can provide comprehensive data on STEM education and workforce trends. Then we talk about the OECD Green Innovation Matrix, offers indicators to measure green technology development and adaptation. World Bank's Green Growth Indicators tracks environmental and resource productivity, natural assets, and quality of life matrix. And then we have the International Seabed Authority reports, provides updates on international regulations and environmental assessments related to seabed mining. In conclusion, to advance seabed mineral development presents opportunities for economic growth and strategic resource acquisition. However, it also introduces environmental and geopolitical challenges that require careful consideration. Implementing robust monitoring systems and adhering to international standards will be crucial in balancing developmental goals with environmental sustainability in global cooperation. U.S. accelerates seabed mining amid global concerns. So I'm gonna say this is very tricky. Uh, just like when it comes to the average person who does not know anything about sea life or even care about the ocean or know about zombie whales or know about the ramifications of allowing people to have all of these gases that come up and then poison our food. There are zombie whales, and I talk about it. So, I talk about all the time. These zombie whales is a real thing. Um, so all right. So what I like to do is to go over one video referring to zombie whales, the threat beneath Central California. All right. And there's ABC. It's going to be Central California. This is for educational purposes. That's the reason I'm using it. I'm not really looking to profit off of it. Disclosure, so that way ABC is not trying to look at me like, but at the same time, it's really just about these zombie whales.
This is hissing. I can hear it.
Idle oil and gas wells, more than 40,000 of them here in California.
This is abandoned oil and gas well. It's open at the top.
The gases can leak long after operators walk away.
Typically, these aging wells, when they leak gas, it is methane.
The tests conducted by ABC News and affiliates across the country. The wells Action News visited in the Central Valley and what ABC News found in Southern California.
This is just full of oil and it is just sitting here right outside of a neighborhood.
Action News investigates zombie wells, the threat beneath.
Oh, there's the beep. There it is. Oh, wow. These numbers are climbing fast.
And thank you for joining us tonight for Action News Live at 6. Good evening, I'm Margot Kim.
And I'm Dale Urong. We're live on ABC 30, Hulu Live, and wherever you stream. Central California has a rich history of oil production, but what happens when the oil dries up and some wells are left to sit idle? Action News reporter Gabe Ferris visited 25 wells over the past several months.
He's poured through their records and uncovered that some wells are known by regulators to leak oil and spew gases even after they've stopped pumping. They're what some call zombie wells. Gabe?
Well, Margot and Dale, idle oil and gas wells can sometimes leak years after production stops. It's earned them the nickname zombie wells because they seem to come back to life almost on their own. As part of a nationwide ABC News investigation, we set out to find some right here in Central California. Experts say the leaking wells could have negative impacts on the environment and even public health. Central California is home to thousands of oil and gas wells. Some have operated for decades, while others sit idle. They haven't produced oil in at least 2 years, and many haven't been properly plugged.
One of the big problems is that idle wells can leak. They can leak gases like methane and some other gases that can cause health and safety hazards to people who live nearby.
Energy analyst Clark Williams-Derry says there are more than 40,000 idle wells in California. Action News set out to find some as part of a months-long ABC News investigation. We're here in Tulare County, just south of Porterville, where state records show at least 10 oil wells in this field. They're all visible from the public road. At least 3 of them appear to actively be pumping for oil, but several others have been idle for years. State regulators say idle wells should be permanently closed and sealed with a cement plug deep underground. Estimates show it can cost more than $180,000 per well, so Williams Dairy says some operators turn to a cheaper alternative.
In California, companies can essentially avoid plugging their wells by paying fees, and those fees allow for delay and allow companies to sort of kick the can down the road.
The option is entirely legal. The well is not plugged with concrete underground, and the operator agrees to routine testing. As we found, leaks can still happen. There's another cluster of oil wells just down the road from where I'm at now. State regulators visited the site last year and wrote up 5 violations for 2 of the wells that they said were actively leaking oil.
It's not surprising at all that you are able to find leaking idle wells. I mean, it's really fairly common.
In some places, leaking oil wells are referred to as zombie wells. ABC News and affiliate stations conducted their own testing at 76 wells across 5 states. More than half were leaking oil or combustible gas at the time.
Methane is a potent greenhouse gas.
Fresno State Earth and Environmental Sciences professor Christopher Pluhar says methane is one of the gases known to often leak from idle wells.
Methane is 30 times more effective at trapping heat in Earth's atmosphere than carbon dioxide.
It's impossible to know if the oil wells we visited are causing environmental or health issues, but the state's website for idle wells lays out the possible risks in the first paragraph. If a well is not properly sealed and closed, the website reads, it may provide a pathway for hydrocarbons or other contaminants to migrate into drinking water or to the surface.
There are cases where people who live near idle oil and gas wells that are leaking, who experience headaches or other health problems that they attribute at least to the presence of leaking wells very near their homes.
The American Petroleum Institute is a trade association representing oil and natural gas companies. In a statement to ABC News, a spokesperson said in part, the proper sealing of oil and natural gas wells is paramount to ensure safety, sustainability, and environmental protection. API has established strong industry standards to advance the permanent closure and remediation of historic wells in accordance with applicable federal and state laws. With more wells now left to sit idle as California's oil production slows, Williams Dairy says there are 3 ways forward: setting a firm deadline to plug wells, mandating companies to save more money for cleanup, and reforming regulations.
We need to have better funding for regulators to test wells. We need to have better funding for regulators to make sure that they're enforcing the law. And we also need to hold the feet to the fire and not let companies off the hook.
A new law recently signed by Governor Gavin Newsom increased the fees well operators must pay for their idle wells. The fees range from $1,000 to $60,000 per well per year. Overall, though, paying the fees is still much cheaper than the average cost of $180,000 to plug a well, leading experts and environmental groups to say there is still much more work to do. Dale and Margot.
It is eye-opening. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
Zombie wells, the threat beneath, streams on ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis on December 19th. You can also head to our website for an interactive map of idle oil wells in California.
Hey, Central California, stay up to date with all the latest news and weather. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to ABC.
All right, let's see what they got. So what I'm gonna do is I'm first gonna let's go ahead and minimize this real quick. I would like to check that out. So ABC's zombie well map. All right, let's move on. So I have talked about zombie wells on a regular basis. I believe I've seen a few flying from Houston, Texas to California. It's really mesmerizing to see the off colors, and it is a huge waste when you have land and you can't grow because the ground is poisoned. This is something that is a huge threat, and I am going to rehash a little bit of what ABC said. At the same time, this is something that I felt passionate about, and stating it is good to have a visual. So zombie wells are non-producing or orphaned oil and gas wells that have been not been properly sealed or reclaimed, they can cause serious environmental, economic, and public health issues. So let's talk about the worst case scenarios of the zombie wells. When you have uncontrolled methane leaks, the methane, a potent greenhouse gas, leaks unchecked into the atmosphere. One zombie well can emit tons of methane per year, contributing massively to climate change. An example of this will be in 2021, a single orphan well in Ohio emitted 100 times more methane than expected. When we talk about the ground, and this is kind of like the ground exposure, when you have poisoned the ground and you can't drink or eat from it. Again, the leaking wells can allow oil, brain, and toxic fracking fluids to seep into the drinking water, uh, basically the drinking water aquifers. And the chemicals like benzene and toluene are carcinogenic and pose severe health risk. The contamination may go undetected for years. This does happen, and that's the reason why a lot of these big companies are go through these lawsuits. The Another thing that can happen is explosions and fire hazards. Abandoned wells may still contain pressurized gas. They also leak, can cause explosions near homes or infrastructures, especially in urbanized areas. In Texas and Pennsylvania, there have been reports of homes and fields exploding due to gas migrating from abandoned wells. When we talk about the ecosystem destruction, all right, the leaks and spills destroy the vegetation, kills wildlife, and poison soil. The sensitive habitats, including wetlands and forests, are especially vulnerable. Restoring these areas can cost millions of dollars and decades of efforts of our effort. The economic drain on our taxpayers is another concern. When companies abandon wells without cleanup, the cost falls on the public. Cleanup costs could range from $30,000 to over $1 million per well, depending on the location and the condition. Some states have thousands of orphan wells and inadequate funding. Then the systemic risk, improperly sealed wells can contribute to induce a systematicity, which is basically human caused earthquakes. This especially true when old wells are near underground wash water injection sites. The last point will be regulatory evasions in shell companies. Companies often transfer liabilities to shell companies that later declare bankruptcy. This leaves wells orphaned with no responsible party to manage the cleanup. So what I would like people to do is to think about how can we keep these companies that do decide to go with the shell companies to keep them responsible. And really and truly, though, that right there might be a grant worth writing for a nonprofit. So if there is a nonprofit that would like to take that on and that has the capability, the logistics, and the team, that might be something great to do. That'd be a great nonprofit grant to write. All right, moving on. So I am going to conclude this executive order, and we're now going to go to something else. And what I'm gonna do is we're gonna take a 30-minute intermission, and then I'm probably going to work on a few more things. With that being said, this is email, and this has been For Democracy. It was a pleasure working with you, dealing with you, and just really trying to figure out the executive orders that's going on. This is going to be one of many that we're going to be going over. One thing about it is right now, when it's fresh, you need to keep working and working. It's something about taking breaks. Whenever you take a break off, that just allows you to be complacent. And then when you allow tyranny to reign, then all of a sudden it just becomes regular. It's just another Tuesday to you. It's another Thursday. All right. This is email checking out, and this is For Democracy. Like, comment, share, subscribe.